Brett Favre accused of receiving money from the state's welfare system and diverting it to other causes.
Massive scandal that's been erupting for the last 2 years. As much as $80 million in federal welfare money intended for poor women and children were diverted to a number of projects, including some $8 million to projects involving Brett Favre.
Brett Favre is a Green Bay Packers legend. I'm going to just start this video off by saying this. What he did on the football field was incredible. What happened between him and Aaron Rodgers is a little weird. And we made a video on that. It's actually our most viewed video on this channel if you guys want to check it out in the end screen. But ever since his playing career has ended, Brett Favre has been coming under fire for some very shady stuff. I mean, not even when his playing career ended. It seems like the moment he got traded from the Green Bay Packers, controversy has just been following this man everywhere. And I will give him credit. He successfully was able to evade it the first time. This time, things are looking really freaking bad for Brett Favre. I mean, I did a lot of research and I can't find a single angle where things are going to turn out good for this man. So before we get to the content, these are all allegations, although there are screenshots proving that he did some shady stuff. And we're going to start doing giveaways every single Friday. We're going to be giving away cash to a subscriber that turns on our notifications on our channel, or a copy of Madden 23 or Madden points. Now that we get all that out of the way, break! Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? To understand what's been going on in Brett Favre's life recently, we need to go all the way back to what happened with Brett Favre when he got traded to the New York Jets. In 2010, a woman by the name of Jenn Sterger accused Brett Favre of sending some fairly inappropriate text messages of his Johnson to the reporter. He also sent her voice messages asking her to come to his hotel room. Brett Favre, of course, was married and had gray hair by this time, which made things a little creepy, if I'm being honest. The NFL actually investigated this, and the punishment they levied against Favre is actually, like, atrocious. They investigated this matter, and Favre was fined $50,000 for failure to cooperate with the investigation. And in the very next season, he happened to play for the Minnesota Vikings. Now, here's the crazy thing. Jenn Sterger actually mentioned that a lot of people don't realize I've never met Brett Favre. I don't know him. I've never met him personally. I've never shaken his hand, never said hello, never introduced myself. So to this day, a lot of people don't realize I was cyberbullied. I wasn't his mistress. I wasn't his girlfriend. We had no physical interaction at all. And I think that's something. To this day, that still shocks people. I'm not the Brett Favre girl. I tell people that every chance I get, including dumb drunks at a bar. People meet me and say, you're a lot different than I thought you would be. I say, what were you expecting? Regardless, Jenn Sterger was then known as the Brett Favre girl, despite her having a career before the whole scandal unfolded. The reason I'm bringing this story up is it just gives you an idea of the very beginning of some of the shady stuff that Brett Favre was accused of doing. And unfortunately, this woman got the Monica Lewinsky treatment as a result of it. And at the time, I'm gonna be honest, I don't really put a lot of stock into he said, she said. I mean, yes, I do feel bad for the woman that is now being branded as the Brett Favre girl and having that follow her around everywhere she goes. But at the same exact time, there wasn't enough evidence for me to go ahead and say, wow, Brett Favre is a truly atrocious human being. I mean, yes, the signs were there with him not cooperating with the investigation and then him getting traded by the New York Jets to the Minnesota Vikings, but that's besides the point. Now I know what you might be thinking at this point.
Mike, this happened 12 years ago. Why are you rehashing old drama?
Well, I felt like it's important for us to open up this video with some sketchiness that Brett Favre has had in his past, some skeletons that are in his closet, before we make our judgments about his current situation. On top of that, we're gonna hear from Jenn Sterger in a little bit. She has a lot of commentary about this situation. So here's what Brett Favre is dealing with and being accused of. A former Mississippi governor helped Brett Favre obtain welfare funds for a university volleyball stadium, according to texts. So there's actual texts, and there was an investigative report by Mississippi Today that says never before seen text messages show that former governor Phil Bryant Bryant tried to shepherd a proposal to use welfare funds on the construction of a new volleyball stadium for retired NFL player Brett Favre, a project prosecutors have called a scheme to defraud the government. Bryant has previously denied any involvement with the project, which has emerged as the centerpiece of a massive criminal scandal in which prominent officials misspent or stole millions in welfare funds intended for the nation's poorest residents. Oh my god, look, politicians being corrupt and sketchy. I would have never imagined that. Politicians are weird and corrupt. That's just my opinion. So here's what this article says. Text messages entered Monday into the state's ongoing civil lawsuit over the welfare scandal reveal that former Governor Bill Bryant pushed to make NFL legend Brett Favre's volleyball idea a reality. The texts show that the then governor even guided Favre on how to write a funding proposal so that it could be accepted by the Mississippi Department of Human Services, even after Bryant ousted the former welfare agency director John Davis for suspected fraud. Just left Brett Favre. Bryant texted nonprofit founder Nancy New in July of 2019. Within weeks of Davis's departure, can we help him with his project? We should meet soon to see how I can make sure we keep your projects on course. When Favre asked Bryant how the new agency director might affect their plans to fund the volleyball stadium, Bryant assured him, I will handle that. Long story, but had to make a change. But I will call Nancy and see what it will take, according to the filing and a text Favre forwarded to New. The newly released texts filed Monday by an attorney representing Nancy New's nonprofit show that Bryant, Favre, New, and Davis and others worked together to channel at least $5 million of the state's welfare funds to build a new volleyball stadium at the University of Southern Mississippi, where Favre's daughter played the sport. Favre received most of the credit for raising funds to construct the facility. Let's say you don't know what welfare is at all. If you do a quick Google search, who does welfare go to, and you scroll down, who does welfare help the most? Children. Children make up the biggest percentage of welfare beneficiaries. An examination of the demographics of welfare recipients reveal that those under the age of 18 account for 41% of all welfare users. Meanwhile, people aged between 18 and 64 account for 50% of the recipients. Why do people go on welfare? Well, they're typically funded by taxpayers and allow people to cope with financial stress during rough periods of their lives. In most cases, people who use welfare will receive a bi-weekly or monthly payment. So it's essentially a means to help people that are struggling financially to get some aid from the government. This is a horrible time to get accused of and honestly have really good evidence coming out against you for welfare fraud, particularly because we're in a horrific financial time in the current state of our country. I mean, economically, man, every single day when I check my portfolio, it's red as hell. I don't know about you guys, but that's besides the point. Bryant has for years denied any close involvement in the steering of welfare funds to the volleyball stadium, though plans for the project even included naming the building after him, one text shows. New, a friend of Bryant's wife, Deborah, ran a nonprofit that was in charge of spending tens of millions of flexible federal welfare dollars outside of public view. What followed was the biggest public fraud case in state history. According to the state auditor's office, nonprofit leaders had misspent at least $77 million in funds that were supposed to help the needy, forensic auditors found. Holy crap, that's really freaking bad. And this is before I even show you guys the text messages. This is just the report. New pleaded guilty to 13 felony counts related to the scheme, and Davis awaits trial, but neither Bryant nor Favre have been charged with any crime. And while the state-of-the-art facility represents the single largest known fraudulent purchase within the scheme, according to one of the criminal defendants' plea agreement, the state is not pursuing the matter in its ongoing civil complaint. Current Governor Tate Reeves abruptly fired the attorney bringing the state's case when he tried to subpoena documents related to the volleyball stadium. That's how freaking corrupt things are, bro. If you thought the Matt Araiza situation was wild, where San Diego State University was trying to sweep everything under the rug so they could hold on to their beloved punter for one more season, this is actually a freaking government scheme. I feel like this is about to get demonetized because it might be categorized as some sort of wild conspiracy theory, but wow, the messages are kind of swaying me into believing everything out here is true. But of course, so I don't get sued, I'm gonna say this is all alleged. alleged. The messages also show that a separate $1.1 million welfare contract that Favre received to promote the program, the subject of many national headlines, was simply a way to get more funding to the volleyball project. I could record a few radio spots, Favre texted New, according to the new filing, and whatever compensation could go to USM. They might be wondering, why on earth does Brett Favre want a new stadium so freaking badly? Well, his daughter goes to USM and plays volleyball for their volleyball team. Check out the text messages. Brett Favre, if you were to pay me, is there any way the media can find out where it came from and how much? Nancy New, no, we never had that information publicized. I understand you being uneasy about that though. Let's see what happens on Monday with the conversation with some of the folks at Southern. Maybe it will click with them, hopefully. Brett Favre, okay, thanks. Nancy New, wow, just got off the phone with Phil Bryant. He is on board with us. We will get this done. Brett Favre, awesome. I needed to hear that for sure. So a few months later, New's nonprofit paid the first lump sum of $2.5 million. It paid another $2.5 million on December 5th, 2017. According to the state auditor's office report released in 2020, Favre also received his first payment under the advertising agreement of $500,000 in December of 2017. Oh my God, man, this text is like kind of disgusting. Nancy, Santa came today and dropped some money off. Thank you, my goodness, thank you. We need to set up the promo for you soon. You're way too kind. The nonprofit paid the athlete another $600,000 in June 2018. By 2019, as the cost of construction for the volleyball center grew and Favre had committed to pay more than $1 million himself that he expected to receive from MDHS, the athlete became antsy. According to a calendar entry entered by Davis, Bryant and Favre requested to meet with welfare officials about the USM facility in January of 2019. And here's the email, man. How the hell did they get these documents? I have no idea. This meeting was requested by Brett Favre and the governor to discuss the educational research program that addresses brain injury caused by concussions. They also want to discuss the new facility at USM. Though the texts illustrate the governor's support for the program around that time, Bryant said in a April 2022 interview with Mississippi Today that he rejected the request from New and Favre fund the project further. I stood up and said no, Bryant told Mississippi Today. I remember a meeting with Nancy New and Chris, and maybe it was another one, and me, and she came in one more time. Volleyball. And she said, my budgets have been cut and I can't do all these things. And that's another thing. Budgets are cut, so I'm thinking somebody's watching overspending. And then she said, and oh, by the way, can we have money for the volleyball? And I said, no, we're not spending anything right now. That is terminated. Here's where it gets sketchy. Brian said, did you guys get any of the new programs from DHS? Nancy New said, yes, we did. From all the craziness going on, we had been made to believe that we were not getting refunded, but we did. Someone was definitely pulling for us behind the scenes. Thank you. And Phil Bryant responded with a smiley face. So here's the translation of what went down. Brett Favre essentially helped facilitate welfare fraud in the excess of $5 million in order to build a volleyball center for Southern Miss, where his daughter was a volleyball player during the time that the texts were sent. The reason why this is so horrific is because Brett Favre has made $137.8 million throughout his career. This is just throughout the NFL. I mean, we're just talking strictly NFL and not the tons of sponsorships that you see this man continue to be a part of throughout his entire life. I mean, he's been retired for quite some time. I still see him in Wrangler commercials. I mean, this guy doesn't miss a bag. So the fact that he had to get $5 million from the government, and that's $5 million that is supposed to go to people that are struggling financially when he's a guy that's already a multi-millionaire, and if he invested that money wisely, he's probably even more, just makes him a huge douchebag if what is alleged is true. Now, last year, Favre did pay back $600,000 to the state of Mississippi, an amount he had been paid for speeches that he never gave. Favre was commissioned in 2017 and 2018 to promote a state poverty fighting initiative, receiving $1.1 million. The state's auditor's office reported that he initially gave back $500,000 of the amount, but earlier this month, Favre was asked in a letter to repay the remainder plus interest. So what I'm wondering is, did this come out because he didn't repay the remainder, or was this going to come out anyway? And is this like a tiny little blip in a larger scheme that we'll include in the article for you guys in the description down below, because it's getting really too long. What's funny is Jenn Sterger's response to this entire thing. Her response is really priceless. Oh, now he gets in trouble for inappropriate texts. If you share this tweet, I politely request that you read the last one I posted and never call me the Brett Favre girl again. And to do justice, by by Jenn Sterger. We'll definitely read the tweet for you guys. Days like today are always tough. I want to act like my life isn't drastically impacted by another person's treatment of me, but that would be a lie. To think my legacy and everything anyone knows of me can be summed down to the title of the Brett Favre girl is not only disgusting but disheartening, and every time sports has a Me Too moment, I'm always somehow the go-to expert. But what we haven't addressed is this weird hero culture we have created around pro athletes that somehow grants them immunity to consequences. If you're good enough, white enough, and important enough to think of all the jobs that people have gatekept from me that I was a shoo-in for simply because having access to him, his interviews, and his legacy was more important than any kind of reparations I was due. And believe me, I was owed them. I still am. I'm sorry 2010 me was not a good enough victim by societal standards because it was a pre-Me Too, and the world wasn't ready to face that maybe one of their heroes wasn't the god that they had built him up to be. But all the blame can't be placed on Brett Favre for my scenario. The media played a sick and twisted role in painting me as a bad guy simply because I looked a certain way, and none of them has printed a retraction, though some like NFL.com have deleted articles, but not the search engine sheets that show they are still somewhere in the system, or the big conglomerate PR companies like Sunshine Sachs that launched a nasty attack on me and my character on behalf of the Jets. It was a well-oiled machine that I was taken out by. 28-year-old me didn't stand a chance. Humans are complicated, flawed beings, and bad people do bad things. But the truth is, I forgave Brett Favre a long time ago for what he did to me. Cost me my job simply because I wouldn't sleep with him. I forgave the NFL. I forgave the media, but it was the hardest thing I ever did. Forgiving people that never deserved it, let alone even ask for it. My life means nothing to them, and to think it did would be incredibly egocentric of me. But what is it going to take for me to get my second chance when my first should have never been taken from me? The only people who think I'm problematic are the ones with something to hide. And if that's the case, maybe you should clean up your own house to prevent future me's. I've done the work on myself. I've spent countless hours, months, years on a therapist's couch asking what I did to bring this upon myself, and dynamics like it. And the truth is, I still don't have all the answers, but it hasn't stopped me from fighting for what's right. I believe in redemption when people have expressed remorse, have done the work, and have taken that work out into the world to show you they learned something from it. Brett Favre has done none of that. I'm roadkill in his rear view, and you all are just now discovering that awful people do awful things when there are no consequences. Welcome to the real world. There's a lot to unpack here, man. I mean, this is a horrific look for Brett Favre, and without a doubt, he could potentially go to jail for this. Let me know what you guys think about this in the comment section down below. Let me know how you perceive Brett Favre after all of this. I mean, do you think this tarnished his legacy, or do you think that he is a victim of some sort of attack? I really tried to see things from another view. I really struggle to do so, but maybe you have another perspective from me in the comment section, which I would respect. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.